you very much. Your Excellencies, the former Deputy Governor of Enugu State, Your Excellency, the incoming Deputy Governor of Enugu State, the Chairman of this occasion, Professor Ezi Wee. Please permit me to stand on the order of protocol already established. Our topic today, leadership in modern times, youth bridging the gap. I must confess that while I had heard about MEDRHUS before today, I didn't know so much about your activities in the society. So when I received this invitation to join you today in your leadership forum, the first thing I did was to look up your website, to acquaint myself with the goals and objectives of MEDRHUS. My search gladdened my heart because I emerged with a deeper understanding of MEDRHUS' mission and interventions in the society. As a result of this, my interest and enthusiasm doubled and enthused by your choice of topic. It is an affirmation that you know that there is a dearth of the correct leadership framework in our society, and that the right leadership would drive our country out of its current morass. I am thus humbled that you elected to invite me for today's lecture, which I believe will be an interesting exchange of ideas on leadership. What is leadership? It is probably best to start this discussion with a definition of leadership. This can be tough since there are many different definitions. However, I particularly like Tony Robbins' definition, which describes leadership as the ability to influence, inspire, and help others become their best selves, building their skills and achieving goals along the way. Leadership philosophy has evolved significantly over the years, from the earliest theory of leadership to the great man theory. This latter theory was inspired by the lives of world figures like Alexander the Great, Abraham Lincoln, Henry V, etc. And basically held that you could only be a good leader if you were destined to be one. In other words, leadership of that period was predicated on predestination. It was modified to give rise to the trait theory of leadership. This theory attempted to better define the actual traits of a good leader. It admitted that some of those traits of leadership could actually be learned by lesser mortals. are not necessarily predestined. It, however, also considered that many of the leadership virtues were innate. These two theories had one thing in common. They attempted to describe leadership solely from the perspective of the leader, i.e., the personality, traits, and destiny. However, these now outdated theories have been called into question by the failures of these several great hero-type characters, both in the past and even in the present. The most recent example of this could be the Ukraine misadventure, where a hero-type leader like Putin has so far been embarrassed by a more transformational leader like Zelensky, who has been able to galvanize his people in Ukraine, as well as global support, to mount what has been a surprisingly successful defense of Ukraine against greater odds. Perhaps as a result of failures like this, the theory of transformational leadership emerged in the 1970s and mid-80s, shifting the emphasis from this earlier focus on leaders' personality to an emphasis on the relationship between the leader and the led, i.e. the followers. For example, there are levels of achievement. In other words, good leadership should not only be about leaders' personality traits or his visionary nature, but also about his ability to convey his vision and most of all, and the envisioned state, and not the most challenging aspect of leadership. Rather, the true test of leadership is in the management of the journey and the dynamics of carrying the team along to the final objective. In Africa, we have been grappling with the flaws of the leadership model bequeathed on us by colonialism. That leadership model derives directly from the heroic person leadership. It has grown over the century into a heroic leadership complex. By the time the colonialists left, they were succeeded by leaders who continued and being grateful to them for performing what is part and parcel of the calling of their offices. The collapse of leadership in Africa has had a reverberating effect on youth of the continent. Nigeria, for example, reflects this collapse in the different malaise suffered by the youth. For example, the level of nepotism that is currently in the country, the collapse of insecurity, the menace of students staying at home for upwards of 7 months, simply due to the inability of government and the lecturers' union to come to an accord on issues of funding our universities, has a linkage to this collapse. More significantly, is the fear that the Nigerian economy can go bankrupt if no urgent steps are taken to halt the decline. From whatever prism you may want to look at it, students are victims of the leadership failure that has afflicted Nigeria. Youth bridging the gap in modern leadership. The theme of today's 15 and 29 years of age. In considering this topic, one must first ask if there is indeed a gap in the modern leadership landscape. A quick overview of the environment around us, both in Nigeria and even in Africa as a whole, shows a deplorable leadership situation, where despite undeniable potential and natural resources, our leaders have been unable to generate any meaningful scale of economic returns for our peoples. As a result, we are faced with high poverty rates across the country and even in the continent, huge infrastructure gaps that prevent our teeming youth from expressing themselves in their chosen endeavors, very low rates of job creation resulting in high and rising rates of unemployment across the country. All of these result in the youth, our most valuable assets, seeking expression for their dreams outside the continent, sometimes even at the risk of losing their lives in the process. If I ask a cross-section of our leaders of tomorrow gathered here in this hall what their most enduring aspiration is, after emerging from a laborious and tedious academic journey in the university, at a conservative estimate, 9 out of 10 of you will confess that you aspire to travel abroad. What that abroad means is vague to you. It is like aspiring in a void. Abroad in this circumstance could mean getting off to Europe and America to do menial jobs, which have no correlation to the course of study you have studied. For Nigeria, it is a loss, but the youth are so disillusioned and angry with the status quo that they don't care. The hopelessness they see in the horizon is so benumbing that all they want is to be able to contribute their own quota to society, no matter what or which society that is. This brain drain is what has culminated in that queer and innocuous lingo devised by the youth and delivered as a coinage of the Yoruba slang called Japa, which has now become popular. Japa means escape from calamity and destruction to come. So when any youth succeeds in escaping out of Nigeria, it is celebrated with fanfare on social media as if they had escaped a Hitler concentration camp. It is indeed bothersome. In the last 1 or 2 decades, the youth of Nigeria have been escaping out of the country in very lamentable circumstances. They pay through their noses to travel without papers, most especially through the Mediterranean route, where they journey endlessly on the sea. Many of them perish in the process. And when asked why they chose such risky adventure in the bid to leave the country, they said living in Nigeria had become as risky as traveling on the Mediterranean. I must point out that in this bid, Nigeria has lost hundreds of our prime human assets with potential to rescue her tomorrow from the tragedy that lies ahead. So in summary, it is indeed accurate to describe the leadership landscape in Nigeria in particular, and perhaps Africa as a whole, as being replete with gaps, which needs to be bridged if we're to achieve our aims and objectives as a people or nation. Having established the existence of this gap, the next consideration will be whether the youth are ready or equipped to fill this educational system. Considering these factors, one can only say that the average youth in Nigeria is not yet equipped for leadership. However, understanding that will spark their love for leadership and set them on the lifelong quest of learning to become good leaders. The early interest in leadership in our youth, as exhibited by the MEDRHUS, is truly commendable. For many reasons. First, the youth make up the large proportion of our society in Nigeria. Just over 26% for the age bracket under consideration. An improved appreciation of leadership among the youth is bound to filter through and escalate to all other segments of the population, with the potential benefit accruing to the country as a whole. Second, the youth comprise the core of the Nigerian labor force, and an improved appreciation of leadership within the labor force will emerge phenomenon, which finds application at virtually all segments of our lives. Thus, we can all aspire to become leaders, either on campus, in church, in our village associations, bridge the gaps in the modern leadership landscape with positive effects for the Nigerian society and economy at large. Characteristics of a good leader. Leadership history is replete with accounts of people who have excelled in their roles as operatives, but who, upon promotion to position of leadership, either performed at average level or failed altogether. Some other person as leadership, apart from possession of good technical or work skills. This element has variously been defined as emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence may be decomposed into 5 individual components that ultimately inform the makeup of good leader. These include self-awareness. This entails being acutely aware of one's strengths, weaknesses, emotional triggers, values, goals, and their impact on third parties. This character allows the leader to arrange his affairs so as to take advantage of his strengths for the benefit of the team, while mitigating his weaknesses and limitations. This can be done through dedication, team composition, etc. Self-regulation, which means the ability to rein in one's potential disruptive tendencies for the benefit of the team. This would make a leader who has a bad temper or caustic tone, for example, to consciously hold self from venting in the presence of their team or verbally abusing team members to avoid demotivating the team members. Motivation. This is the critical element which leads the good leader to drive towards his goal just for the satisfaction of achieving the set objective, rather than for the reason of. This is an especially critical characteristic in today's modern world, with many cross-cultural and cross-professional teams, where people with diverse background and skill sets are expected to collaborate seamlessly. Social skills. This entails the quality of managing relationships very well with people, resulting in building strong bonds between team members, which are important in moving towards a shared goal. Style of leadership. In trying to better understand good leadership, either with a view to becoming a more effective team member, or indeed in aspiring to take up the mantles of leadership wherever we may find ourselves, it is obvious that word of punishment to motivate their team members. These leaders tend to be good managers, able to deliver clear and consistent results with reasonable increments over time. However, this style of leadership is generally unable to deliver any revolutionary growth or any performances outside what is contractually agreed. Transformational leadership. Leaders with this style goes beyond the basic transactional relationship with their team members, employing in addition to professional influence. This influence involves motivation of the team members with the challenge offered by the task to be undertaken, the learning opportunity for the team members, and the overall appeal, a situation best described as pseudo transformational leadership, whereas authentic transformational leadership would involve the leader being guided by ethics. Transcendental leadership. This involves leaders who go even further to motivate their team members with not only reward and punishment, professional learning and capacity development, but also with the promise of satisfying real needs of individuals, groups, or societies in general. These leaders are just as visionary and charismatic as the transformational leaders, but also exert an even deeper influence through offering the team members the opportunity to satisfy that innate longing in every human being to do something worthwhile for which they may be remembered by posterity. These leaders tend to be servant leaders and therefore tend not to restrict the authority of leadership at the topmost level. By this willing delegation of powers, they therefore tend to be better at developing new leaders within their team. What it takes to be a good leader. Becoming a great leader is a fairly given transcendental leadership, which we mentioned earlier, a specific meaning and objective. This type of leadership involves the leader first connecting strongly with his mission in his mind, and then cascading this connection and focus on the mission across the team or organization, thus converting the team members also into leaders, because these mission-driven leaders serve the mission. Their commitment encompasses all areas of the mission, apart from the team members extending even to customers, shareholders, and any other stakeholders to the mission. Needless to add that this sort of leaders must subjugate their ego, as a large ego would negatively impact their ability to achieve success. In any of these dimensions mentioned above, it is only then that a youth leader can truly bridge the leadership gaps that exist around us today, building the leader in us. In line with our conviction that everyone can be a leader, not only in the future, but even now, wherever we may find ourselves. Today's conversation will be incomplete if we don't spare a thought for how we can all cultivate other aspects of life. I would recommend evolving at supersonic speed. As a result, any leader or aspiring leader who is not constantly upgrading his knowledge base will lose relevance rapidly. This is even easier now with the internet replete with online learnings, courses, many of them free of charge. Start today. Develop a personal learning plan and stick to it. Number 2, seeking out opportunities of responsibility or service. Practice, they say, makes perfect. The best way to build leadership skills or better understand leadership is to take on position of responsibility at whatever level you are today, e.g., departmental student association, student hostel administration, churches, town and village associations. Third, build your self-discipline. The leadership elements we mentioned above, i.e., self-awareness and self-regulation, require high level of personal discipline, which is not easy to cultivate. Challenge yourself to develop yourself in some way or the other and exercise your personal discipline by convincing yourself to do something beneficial, even when it might not necessarily be fun. Simple areas to use in sharpening your levels of discipline would include punctuality, early rising to prepare before each day, adhering to a personal study plan, etc. Fourthly, learn to be a good team player. It is difficult to be a good leader if you cannot be a good follower. Thus, a critical help in building your leadership skills is building the ability to function well within a team. Learning to think we. Probably one of the most central responsibilities of the leader is communication. The leader needs this qualification and quality to convey their vision to the team, as well as to settle conflicts within the team, or even in coaching other members of the team. These entail the 3 key skills, namely speaking or verbal communication. This implies skill sets like tone of voice, grasp of ground, which involves honing your ability to absorb and process information. Again, part of the communication skills. The ability to analyze the alternatives available to you, but most critically, the courage to take a decision and follow it through with full commitment. These practices have served me well over the years of my career, and I will attempt to illustrate this using a couple of short stories, which I shall share with you presently. The first occurred during my year as a law student. at the University of East London, United Kingdom, where I became the president of the Law Students Society during my time in the school. This was in spite of several disadvantages, not least of which was my racial background as a Black African. However, I was able to appeal to the electorate, the law students, during the students' electioneering campaign by highlighting areas of common interest in a shared mission, which emphasized issues like our need for a revised constitution of the law society, the need to introduce the popular practice of mooting in the School of Law for students at that time, the idea of inviting alumni of the faculty to address our students from time to time, the need to establish a strong relationship with the county courts to allow students a real-life experience of watching courts in operation, the need to pursue the validation as the Peter rights. Building this team, the Peter rights, required a careful communication of my vision. But the real task, as always, was being able to carry them along. Enabled me win the election, something I could never have achieved if I had tried to walk alone. Enugu State between 2005 and 2007. When I was able to galvanize the ministry to deliver several groundbreaking achievements, not least of which were increase in internally generated revenue by over 100% towards one goal, including civil servants, consultants, development partners, and this culminated in the Newswatch magazine at the time in its edition of July 3rd, 2006, identifying me as one of the top 10 commissioners for finance in Nigeria. These achievements were no mean feat, considering the general difficulty in changing long-standing practices in the civil service. However, it required constantly selling the mission to the various members of the team until they were all convinced and setting the right tone through my personal commitment to the task, supporting the team members closely until the project was concluded. Finally, the last but not the least leadership experience I would like to share comes from my leadership of my company, Pinnacle Oil and Gas. From a late entrance into the already mature downstream market in the Nigerian oil and gas industry in 2008, to what is today the leader of the industry in many respects. This was achieved using innovation in spite of various factors stacked against us, which included the existence of large and incumbent players in the industry, most of the market having already been taken at the point of our entry into the industry, the relatively slow growth of the industry. We were able to assert our leadership of the industry by defining an innovative vision to develop the largest onshore, offshore petroleum product handling and storage facility in Africa. Through tireless communication, we were able to sell this vision, first to my team members, then to the industry regulators, and finally to financial partners, who then joined us to achieve this vision. Today, the dream has essentially revolutionized the Nigerian downstream industry. It also gave us leadership in the supply of petroleum products in Nigeria today. Again, coming up with the idea for the project, i.e. the visioning part, and conveying that vision to others. While it was not necessarily easy, it was not the most difficult part of the journey. By far the most challenging part of the journey, which required large dose of transcendental leadership, was the task of maintaining the will and resolve of the team through the 7 to 8 years it took us to deliver the project. The most awesome of the challenges was the unexampled challenge that we faced during the worst of the COVID-19 Naira facility at the Lekki Free Zone, which we could not afford to stop its construction. At the time we had deployed and required a lot of communication, emotional intelligence, moral fortitude to successfully cross the finish line. What then does the Nigerian society need from its leaders of tomorrow? It wants a modern leadership model that is driven by empathy for the people and hunger for the change of the status quo. In earlier discourse, I have highlighted the desirable models which have been tested by nations whose leadership have made critical and significant differences in their societies. A call for youth leadership is a call to action. It is a test for young persons gathered in this room and all this generation to be bridge builders in their respective areas of turfs of operation. What assures us that this is doable is the incomparable and hopefully insightful conversation. We may have inadvertently given the impression that the leader is a messiah, all-knowing, perfect, and infallible. If I have in any way imputed or suggested that impression, allow me to apologize, as nothing can be further from the truth. Leadership is a journey. Every leader at every level is constantly learning and growing to better discharge their ever-evolving responsibilities. On this journey, never be afraid to admit that you're human, imbued with your own weaknesses and fears. Rather, build your team to complement your shortcomings and mitigate areas where you're likely to go overboard. Feel free to seek advice on difficult issues from coaches and mentors so as to keep growing to become the sort of leaders who will ultimately contribute to raising our society and the country as a whole to achieve their lofty potentials. I want to thank you very much for listening and thank you for having me. I wish you success as you step forth to fill the leadership gaps around us. Thank you very much.
We can do better by giving a round of applause for the person who presented us. Barrister Peter to be Mbah. I am now assured, as many people are, that Enugu State has got a governor in the next few months by the grace of God. Now, we would like to pick one question. I hope you would like us to ask just please. He says we will ask questions, 2-3 questions, 4. Please, we will concentrate on this theme that was mentioned, leadership in modern times. Please ask your questions, we'll take, and be mindful of time. Tell us your name, then deliver your question. I will now ask somebody to help me. Dan, are you there? To place the microphone to those who would like to. Please raise your hands, and when you ask about one question at a time, and then somebody's raising his hand up there. Would you help me, please?
My name is Dr. Onovo Onyedikachi. Your Excellency, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I was quick to observe that there were a lot of challenges that make the youth to Japan as you presented. And I am thinking that there may be positive Japan and negative Japan. Like when you travel, I don't want to call it Japan to read your law. It's to prepare you for leadership position that God has presented this morning. And so I want to find out, is there any good reason to Japan? Or should we all remain here and build this nation to become what it is? Or if we have opportunity to Japan and improve ourselves, to come back and change things, should we venture into that? Thank you very much.
Good day. Standing on the radio system protocol, I would like to ask a very good question, which I know one or two people here may be meaning to ask. My name is Ukwogo Kingsley Onyekachi. I'm from Akwini Boetiti. When finance or when financial conditions are the reasons why an aspiring leader cannot be able to achieve his aims and objectives, I'm asking, sir, what advice do you give to such youth? Thank you very much.
My name is Fred Chikada Okochi. Your Excellency, sir, I want to commend you for the beautiful lecture eloquently delivered. We expect of you when we vote you in next year. Thank you.
Your Excellency, sir, my name is Ogen Godwin Chidozie. I come from issues of local government. You have impressed me with your presentation. For over 26 years, I've been involved with youth leadership development under Yoden Africa. One question that bothered me today is that when you have carefully stipulated everything you said this afternoon. My heart worries as to how, during your tenure, by the grace of God and the incoming governor, we can initiate programs that will begin to bring in practical terms the training, the nurturing, and the grooming of those leaders, such that Enugu State will become known as the pivot of good leadership, not only during your tenure, but thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your Excellency, the questions have been dropped, and you may now do justice to them, if you like. The first person asked, wouldn't it be nice for us to go overseas at a certain point to improve ourselves academically and then come back to develop Nigeria? The second person asked, what would you advise a financially bereft youth to do in this circumstance? And then Fred Okoro says, what type of leadership would you employ and adopt when you get into office? Then the last question, of course, we know. We took it. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you very much. Starting with the first question. Any good reason for one to Japa? I think that was the question. Yeah, okay, the coin name Japa in itself has negative connotation. But indeed, if what you're asking is, would there be any good reason for us to export skills outside our state or outside our country? That's number one. Number two, would there also be any good reason for us to go overseas and acquire skills with the hope of coming back to deploying those skills in our society? The answer to that is a resounding yes. And when I was talking about my leadership experience, I did mention that I did my undergraduate studies in the United Kingdom. But you know, that of course was a conscious decision. There's nothing wrong with traveling indeed to go and acquire skills, to go and get skillfully engaged. There might even be good reasons for us to have our skills exported to other countries so that we can earn foreign exchange. There are countries that have that model where they make or take deliberate decisions to export their skills. If you know of the Filipinos, you notice that there is a deliberate policy by the government to continue to encourage their workers to travel outside the country with a view to helping the government and foreign exchange. So there could be good reasons for that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The one that hurts is when you have to live out of frustration, out of disillusionment, out of anger, and then you're not even sure what you're going there to do. And whatever you end up doing there, you notice that there's no correlation between what you have studied and what you're doing there. Then there's the second question, speaks to how you address your financial inhibition. So the ideation part of leadership is also something that we can discuss maybe, but the discussion today did not delve into that area because there are frameworks for innovation, and there are, if you were setting out to lead a people, what we discussed here today is that you would have established a goal, you know where exactly you're standing, and you're clear as to where you want to get to. So the leadership skills that you have to deploy as a leader is to carry your team from the current position where they are to that desire, you can create a number of financing models to be able to continue to lead. Again, you have an objective. So your job as a leader is continue to be creative and find creative way of surmounting the challenges along the way. The third question, I think this speaks to the fact that I talked about 3 styles of leadership and which one is expected of me. I thought that already was embedded in the story I told. But again, we talked about transactional, if you want me to highlight that. We talked about transformational, and then we talked about transcendental. So the transactional leadership model, or the transactional leadership style, speaks to extrinsic leadership values. So it's a leadership style that speaks to reward and punishment. It is clearly in our corporate world, when you have that model of leadership, what you are interested in is essentially putting a lot of controls in place and then making sure that the goals are defined, you have targets that you have set, the functional areas are clear, and then you're not so much interested in how those results are achieved. You're interested in making sure that you achieve the results, not so much interested in the welfare of the people delivering those results. What you're interested in is, this is your target, these are your KPIs, you must meet them. If you don't meet them, I sack you. Okay? Strictly speaking, you give me what I've asked of you, I pay you your salary at the end of the day. And then we talked about transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is somehow intrinsic. It's intrinsic because it also goes beyond just achieving the targets or the goals. It speaks also about training, being interested is getting there. But one thing that stands out with the transformational leader is the invincibility of the leader, the personality of that leader. There's so much around that aura of that person. So a lot is not done necessarily. So if you work in a transformational leadership environment, you may be offered a job, for example, by another company, a job that may pay you more, but it goes beyond yourself. You're in this space because you believe in the mission. You're interested. So even the leader is also a servant to that mission. So it's driven a lot by service, where even all the things we've talked about, the transactional, the transformational, would be possessed by the transcendental person. But it goes further to make you buy into the mission, such that I did say that in the various leadership roles that I have played, that part of leadership style is one that I adhere to in all the roles I've played. And of course, you can be sure that even the decision to get into this race, for me, was transcendental. I was driven by a transcendental value. So any CEO, that is in my position will wake up looking forward to going to work. Right? We have an industry that, as I keep saying, is not a nascent market. It's an established industry where you have big players, and yet you have a company that is the leader of that industry. So it's not, people would struggle to be in an industry and have just a small percentage share in that industry. What we have today, by share, by market share, and by revenue, we're number one. So I'm leaving that business to work for the people of Enugu State. It can only be by a value that is beyond expensive and just satisfying myself. It must be something to do with how we can lift our people out of poverty, how we can develop our state and make our state a great state. I think the fourth question from Oke Chigozie also mimics just this last question. What style of leadership? Again, the other thing we talked about a lot in describing the transcendental leader is that he has to be emotionally controlled. So you have to imbibe the components of emotional intelligence, and we already touched on those things. You have to be self-aware, you have to be self-regulated, you have to motivate your team, you have to have empathy, and you have to have social skills. You must imbibe those as the
It is ready, done, I don't know.
And repositioning the state to be economically well positioned.
We're still a bank. My manifesto on the 14th of October. So I'm hoping that whoever that person is, he would or she would be able to, at least we're going to also be, we're going to zoom that live, it's going to be streamed live, and we'll be able to clear those questions. The key thing is that we have clear long-term goals, and we've defined that from the onset. And the good thing about defining your vision is that it becomes measurable. So if we say to the Enugu that we want to grow our economy from where it is today to $30 billion, it means that it's measurable because we know where we are today. So you can 2 years after come back and ask us, where are we? Where have we moved that economy today? So that is one good thing about defining, having a clear vision. And we also say that we're going to achieve a 0% rate in our poverty headcount index. We also know exactly where we are in our poverty headcount rate today. And when we say that in the next 8 years, we're going to have 0%, that means we're going to have zero hunger and there will be eradication of poverty in Enugu State. So these things are measurable. The vision we've expressed to Enugu is measurable. You can measure what we're doing. You can ask us questions. How far have you gone with all this as we go along that development, growth, and greatness journey? So,
Please, a round of applause for him, and thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We may now take our seats because we're getting ready for the next program. I had already intimated you that time is the most difficult thing that our friend and our guest is facing today. And so we shall do things to make it easy for him. But before then, we would like to let you know that there are so many local government chairmen here present. And at that particular point, I could not recognize them because we didn't have that knowledge. But let me first of all recognize a member of Enugu State House of Assembly, Honorable Innocent Ugu. We call him Okoba. Okoba, you're welcome and thank you very much. Please a round of applause for him. I would also like to welcome Honorable Rita Mbah, former Commissioner for Culture and Tourism, Enugu State. Rita, you're welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Beautiful lady. The chairman of Enugu South, Honorable Barrister Chimeze Nkwo, my friend, you're welcome, sir. Thank you very much. Honorable Sidney Ede, the chairman of the Governor Incoming, is also here. Sidney Ede, welcome. Thank you very much. I'm also delighted to welcome Honorable Nze Philip Oko of Udi local government area, the mayor of Udi. Nze won't be sometimes. Let me also welcome BOT and the executive members of Enugu Coalition Movement for Peter. To Peter. Thank you very much. We are now going for the award presentation.
And amplifies and embodies the word leadership. He has shown time and again that he's a leader, he's a father, a pillar of support, and he's a man who has the interest of youths and students at heart. He is the quintessential leader par excellence. Today, he is our guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, if your hands are not occupied, put your hands together as we welcome on stage our guest speaker, His Excellency, Barrister Dr. Peter Mbah. A round of applause, please.
I want to plead with everybody here. Barrister Meka, so we have not recognized anybody like him and others. But we will allow him to leave this place. It does not mean the occasion is ended. It does not. But we plead with you because it is tight on him. Even the DG of the campaign organization is no longer comfortable because he has a lot of things to do in preparation for October 12th affair. So permit him, ladies and gentlemen, to take leave of us. Is it your idea for us to permit him? Do you permit him, sir? Please give a round of applause for him for that. We will now stand up for national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The anthem, please. Thank you very much. God bless Peter Mbah. God bless Enugu State. God bless. Please wait. Please stay where we are. Allow him to move out.